MapleStory clone. Why is this a term? Better question, why is this a thing? Was that game really a formula for success? Well, yes, I suppose. I pointed out in my MapleStory episode that there were a lot of great gameplay elements within that game. What really weighed it down was the poor execution and even poorer community. Well, not poor as in no money, because with the amount of crap they're usually equipped with, it had to cost them a good amount of... I'm digressing. So a lot of people have been wondering what that game would be like if the same formula was applied in a completely different manner. Can the MMO platformer really be done correctly? Well, here's taking a look to another stab at that genre. This is the MMO Grinder, and it's time to look at Laetale. Released in South Korea back in February of 2006, the game made its way over here to the US in late 2008. Developed by ActosSoft and published in North America by OG Planet, Laetale is a 2D side-scrolling platformer MMO nearly identical in style to MapleStory. Yes, really, this exists, and it's not the only one. Yes, the game is pronounced Laetale, not L.A. Tale, so don't think L.A. Law, think La Blue Girl. Really? Those were the first examples that came to my mind? L'histoire de Laetale involves your character having a vision of a woman named Iris, battling an otherworldly demon. As her battle seems lost, you awaken from the vision to find yourself in a strange land, and you head off to search for clues to her fate, as well as assist the land with the problems it's currently facing. So, let's see how all of this turns out. This is a lot more like what I felt MapleStory should look like. The graphics in this game are a lot more consistent. If you remember what I said about Maple having beautiful backgrounds with terrible sprites, well, this game has great backgrounds with great sprites. They seem to mesh a lot better than they did in Maple. In a lot of ways, this game's overall look reminds me a bit of Pie Story. The game is only available in the resolution of 800 by 600, so playing in windowed, which can only be chosen from the launcher, will leave a rather small playing window on your desktop. For the most part, though, this game runs just fine like this. Expect your usual slowdown when you see a bunch of sprites on the screen, but otherwise it's all pretty smooth. What you have here is a very light-hearted, cartoony style. The sprites are a ton better animated and detailed than Maple. You'll notice your character change facial expressions when attacking. The emotes, which I'll get into mentioning later, trust me, there's a reason for that, are all highly animated. There's a lot more frames of animation all around, and the entire art style works. Yes, it's cartoony and it's cute as hell, and a lot of people might not want that, but at least it's consistent. This is a surprisingly decent soundtrack. I find myself getting into a few tracks, but there are others that do end up grating on me. Just like the mesh of background graphics and sprites working better in Laetale than they did in Maple, the music in Laetale all feels like it came from the same team. There are differing tracks, but nothing overly jarring in tone. But it sadly isn't nearly as good as Maple's music. Laetale's soundtrack is almost constantly upbeat. Even with the inclusion of the occasional guitar riff or techno beat, it mostly feels very saccharine. If you're not a fan of high notes, do yourself a favor and turn it down. Or off. It's oddly loud, even on its lowest setting. Sound, of course, matches the upbeat tone. Nothing overly realistic or gritty here. It's another battle soundtrack of bonks and whistles. It also seems crawling with stock sounds. I'm pretty sure that I've had my fair share of goblins and jack-o'-lanterns moo at me when I killed them, seen nine-tailed fox girls meowing, along with being stalked by a group of quacking crabs that belch when I kill them. It's odd, to say the least. I'm also slightly bothered by the odd thud noise that plays every time you close a window. It's a kind of noise that sounds like it would play when you cancel a command, and I can't help but feel I did something wrong every time I finish looting. Overall, the sound design of this game just feels really off. A word of warning beforehand. If you're an avid user of Skype, playing this game will crash it. This and a lot of other free-to-play MMOs use a hack guard called Xtrap, a secondary program set up to block people from using bots, hacks, and other secondary programs to gain an unfair advantage in-game. It also has a tendency to hate other programs, and Skype happens to be one of them. Some claim that older versions of Skype, like 4.2 and earlier, are unaffected. So keep this in mind if you plan on playing this for a while, and consider this my apology for not being on Skype for the past few weeks. Starting out, when you download this game, you'll be installing the OG Planet launcher, which is the springboard for all of OG Planet's games. A nice thing is that you can log in here without having to do it for each particular game. Once installed, choose Laetale and wait for it to load. It might take a while. Once the Lateal launcher starts up, it will patch up to the current version and then let you start to begin the game. Take note this is the only place you have the option to play this game in windowed mode. Now choose a server. I know this is always a tough choice, so I'll give you some time. Once you finally decide on the only server in the game, you can also pick a channel to head to. Pretty much everything except Channel 1 is barren, and you can change them at nearly any time. When you enter character creation, you're given a choice between 5 character classes: Warrior, Knight, Wizard, Explorer, and Engineer. Each class has a vastly different playstyle depending on what type of weapon you equip, and the game allows you to equip 2 weapons at once. For example, a warrior starts with brass knuckles, giving them a martial artist playstyle, but can choose to wield a 2-handed sword for slow but steady attacks, or a lance for longer range combo attacks with higher downtime. An even better example is the Explorer class, who can opt to be fast roguelike dagger wielders or opt for long range with bows and crossbows. And because I'm certain someone will point this out to me anyway, yes, there are class changes that exist within this game that further branch out your class paths. The problem is, you don't see your first class change until level 80. And this game doesn't exactly hand out levels like After Dinner Mints. For a show that focuses mostly on just starting out, I really can't tell you too much about how that works. Creating a character is pretty simple. You can choose between male and female, and all characters are human. There's a few selections for hair and skill colors and haircuts. A lot more than MapleStory, at least. Unlike Maple, you can't choose your starter weapon, but at least you're not forced to choose something that becomes obsolete the minute you complete the first quest in the training stage. When you finally finish, you can enter the rather pointless training stage, or skip it and head right into the game. The stage has no quests, only NPCs explaining controls, so if it's your first time playing, you might as well just take the time to get used to them. Controls are similar to MapleStory, but even more painfully awkward. By default, the arrow keys control movement, with double tapping in a direction allowing you to run, and using the down key as a ducking guard stance, which can lessen the damage from incoming attacks. The Z key is your light attack, and the X key is your heavy attack, which act differently depending on your class and weapon. It could be as simple as a quick sword swing versus a slow damaging swing, a fast arrow shot versus a piercing multi-target arrow shot, or in the case of staff-wielding wizards, swinging that staff versus casting a chargeable long-range spell. As I mentioned earlier, you can equip 2 sets of weapons that you can change on the fly by using the tab key. Press C to jump. You'll notice that you have 3 jumping arcs depending on if you're standing, walking, or running when you jump, and you can't control your path mid-jump. This can take a bit of getting used to, but once you have it down, it works a lot better than Maple. The opening tutorial / movie shows you using your skill attack with the spacebar, but the game doesn't start you with a skill attack. It only seems to suggest that you move your first one to the spacebar, which I did. I guess that's a good time to mention you can move your skills and abilities to alternate keys, but unlike Maple, you don't have free reign over the keyboard and are stuck to a number of set slots. There's just quite a bit of them. The most baffling part of the controls is the loot system, which defaults to the V key. What makes this choice so baffling to me is that when you see a lootable bag, you must walk over to the bag, press the V key, open the menu, select the item, and press the spacebar, and only the spacebar to pick it up. You can also press Shift and Space to pick up all the items there if there's more than one. If you set your first skill attack to space, it's entirely possible you might accidentally waste an attack. Since the loot action key literally does nothing else, I suppose it would make the most sense to just move the loot action over to the spacebar and just save the time and hassle of having 2 separate button presses. Aw, damn it! I only just now realized I could have done that while I was still playing. Luckily, the game automatically grants you money for enemies defeated, so you don't have to worry about the loot system for that, at least. Since the game moves exactly like MapleStory, you can press up to climb ladders and ropes, or press up to enter portals that will take you to the next area. The game also features gamepad support, but it's defaulted to some pretty nonsensical buttons, so you'll spend a while getting it to match what you'll want. It works well enough, although I have had the issue of my character ducking randomly after long periods of play. When you begin fighting and start taking damage and using up SP, you'll notice that your health and SP never replenish on their own. You'll have to either rest by pressing Control by default, or using the appropriate potions. Luckily, you get a pretty large stack of potions early on that replenishes everything nearly full, and it has no cooldown. Once you reach level 20 though, these become useless and you'll have to settle for much slower, less effective options. In a pinch, you can also replenish health and SP by hanging on a rope or ladder, but it's even slower than using the potions or the rest command. The game features a combo meter that serves a bit more than just flash. If you sustain a lot of hits on the combo meter, the game rewards you with more experience and Ellie, Lateal's in-game currency, when you kill an enemy with a high combo counter active. Remember how I mentioned you don't have skills to start? Well, after every level up, you're granted 1 skill point. You can use this skill point in a few different trees, and you can access this by pressing K. Note that there are sub-trees to each section, so, for example, if you like using 2-handed swords as a warrior, you'll want to go into the Weapons tab and click on the 2-handed swords sub-tab to access the sword skills. Keep in mind you'll need money to unlock each skill before you can start putting points into them, and some require more than 1 point, or even a certain level to be reached before you can unlock and add more points into them. This game is really stingy with its skill points, too, so as a tip, it's best to focus on one very specific branch of the skill tree until you can't progress any further until you've reached a certain level. You'll make a lot better progress this way. Speaking of complex upgrade systems, the inventory here can actually be a bit confusing. One actually simplistic part of this is the fact that there's no class-limited armor. You can wear any armor you find in the game as long as you're the appropriate level. Weapons are the only class-specific items. There are separate tabs for equipment, consumables, miscellaneous drops, event drops, which are usually quest items, and pet items. Your miscellaneous tab will be the one that fills up the quickest, but don't be too hasty to sell off items in there, because sometimes they'll be what you need for quest completions. You can upgrade your armor and weapons using a fairly confusing set of items and skills. Confusing because the game doesn't do well to explain how they work. Usually you can access these points on the inventory screen. Pressing these buttons labeled Upgrade or Enchant will tack on a secondary window you can toss equipment in to upgrade or enchant as long as you have the right materials. The window will tell you what you need when you place the equipment inside. There's even a mining and crafting system in place that you'll unlock with later quests. These let you gather materials with special earned commands that work in specific areas, from hitting rocks with a pickaxe to digging in a field to summon a giant graboid to swallow you whole. Speaking of learned skills, this game only lets you perform emotes after collecting and learning them. When you kill a monster, it has a small chance to drop a book titled something like Cry or Laugh. Use the item in your inventory to have the chance to learn the emote, which you can then place on your action bar if you so desire. I fail to see why you'd need a book to learn something that human beings are able to do at infancy. Those implications aside, there's even an insanely high chance you'll fail and not learn the skill, which of course destroys the book. I'm guessing it spontaneously combusts after you open it. I can only assume it was written by the same people who translated this game.
And then the guys say, of course I'm going to fix the backlog of the website.
Shit, you said something funny. I'm supposed to laugh, but how do I do that? Hold on a second. Go, let's see, ha, 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 ha.
You're right.
Second, let me try something else here. Key, 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 key. Key. Here we go. Ja.
She's awkward.
Ja. Fuck it, I am never gonna figure this out.
Oh, it's okay, I understand. It took me a while to find the book about how to smile. I'm only at chapter 1.
This translation is bad. Bad. Horrid. Terrible. Broken. It's not even funny bad, just lazy bad. Okay, I have yet to come across anything as horrible as the pile of symbol quests I've seen in Luna, but it's still a bunch of stilted, nonsensical dialogue that reeks of someone shoving the entire script into Babelfish and never bothering to clean it up. While I never came across anything remotely as terrible as Him to Any Attention and difficulties in the Disney movie, just good luck trying to figure out what anyone is trying to tell you. It's made worse when the game tries to poorly explain its more complex mechanics. It's most apparent when an NPC stops you to tell you some stilted story information. The translation is just as bad in quests at times, but at the very least you can click on the summary tab to read a more to-the-point version of that quest when reading your quest log. Of course, this has no application when you come across hidden quests that literally tell you nothing about what you're supposed to do, and just expect you to go about your game hoping you magically complete the objectives and finally see a quest complete in your log. A lot of hidden quests act more like achievements, such as having your character die a set number of times or walk a certain unseen distance. Many come with stat-boosting titles as consultation. Luckily, hidden quests don't come up too often, and regular quest summaries are a lot more straightforward in their goals. One of the first quest objectives you come across? Die. Yeah, you can't get much more straightforward than that. Quests start out fairly simple, and there's always quests you can pick up if you're looking for them. The quest tracker is absolutely terrible, though, considering there is none, so you'll have to keep opening your log to check on your progress. Early quests will seem rather pointless because you'll gain much more levels for just killing enemies than you would for turning in the quests, but the rewards are good for the money at least. Later on, the quests are a much better payoff, so it's a bit misleading when you start out. There is a jump quest in this game, which is confined to a certain area called Dot Nuri. Done entirely in a retro Super Mario Bros. Style, your goal in Dot Nuri is to reach the end of the stage without being hit by the roving enemies. You cannot attack them, and even brushing up against them or falling down a pit will send you back to the start to try again. Let me say that the whole thing is frustrating as all hell, but if you bother to tough it out, you'll net a decent temporary buff, and get a small bonus in cash from the quest giver who sells the Dot Nuri capsules. You can reach Dot Nuri by purchasing a warp capsule, which also serves as a fast travel system for the game. Each .Nuri capsule costs 1000 Ellie, which is really a drop in the bucket once you get up in levels. Other warp capsules take you to the starter town Belos, the first major city Elias, and later cities as well, each costing more than the last. It's not a bad idea to keep a small stack on hand when playing, especially for the first towns, whose quests have you traveling back and forth between them constantly. Other methods of fast travel include the town portals, which require a Gienda token that I've only seen drop a few times. Another method is the save stones called Iris stones out in the world, and town stones in each town. Saving at these stones will not only give you a boost to XP when you first save there, but will allow you to revive there upon death. When you die in this game, you have the option to res at either the town you last saved at or the last Iris stone you saved at. Either choice will lose you 3% of your experience and 2% of your Ellie. It's not a major drop, but you can at least save your Ellie by dropping it off at a bank at any town. Iris stones also have warp capsules that you can purchase to be taken to the last one you saved at any time. Getting around in the game may be a pain, but at least it's not a mystery. The map in this game is very clear about where you need to go, showing you not only the entire room, but the location of each portal within the room, and what room leads to the next. There are places in the game where you can't use the map, but for the most part, getting lost isn't something you'll do easily. When battling monsters, you'll notice some seem harder than others despite them being the same level. There's a couple factors in this. First off, there's two things you need to look for, the level and the rank. The level is given out relatively by the color of the enemy name. Gray is easiest and worthless to your experience, white is pretty easy, green is easy, yellow is normal, orange is hard, and red is hard to impossible. However, you'll notice that some yellow enemies are harder than others. That's where you'll need to notice the other markings on the enemy name, the small square with the chevron stripes. This is the enemy's rank. 1 stripe is weakest, 2 stripes are tougher, 3 stripes are very tough, and a star is a boss monster that will probably murder you if you go it alone. Once you take both level and rank into account, you'll know how to better handle each enemy. Monster AI is a bit better than Maple too. Kinda. At least it makes more sense. An enemy cannot hurt you if it's not attacking you. Unlike Maple, you'll be hurt for so much as touching an enemy. You can run right through an enemy in this game, and as long as it's not outright attacking you with an obvious attacking animation, you won't take damage. It's even possible to dodge or block attacks in this game if you're deft enough. However, enemy AI is fairly stupid, and running from enemies is entirely too easy. Sometimes all you need to do is run far enough away, or even climb a rope slightly, and if they can't reach you, they'll eventually give up and leave, once again minding their own business until you get into range. Also quite amusing is tricking the enemies to jump into pits. It's a good thing they are so dumb because it's very easy for them to overwhelm you. Another nice thing is that even though your health doesn't regenerate, the enemies doesn't either. You can stick and move your way to victory on many occasions. This game starts out overwhelmingly easy, but starts getting more difficult later on, or at least more challenging. The biggest flaw in starting out is that there's rarely a change of scenery, even that there's a few odd quests that'll take you to a place far beyond your level limit, only to return you right away. I think the game really starts to open up once you hit level 20 and explore some of the more interesting areas. Unfortunately, you're stuck in the same forest area for a good long while, and doing what seems to be an endless amount of quests in Belos and Elias. Even the first difficult area, Temple of Pluton, gets old pretty fast when you're forced to return for the third time. I was bored out of my mind until I first laid eyes on the Behemoth stage, and only then did a lot more interesting areas start to open up to me. Another complaint I have is the occasional lag spikes. There will be times where my character will just freeze or suddenly teleport back to where I was standing, or take constant hits from enemies while I'm unable to move. They seem rare enough, but when they hit hard, and fairly rapidly. Just something to be aware of. Okay, I really don't get why 2D MMOs need to do this, but, once again, if you want to travel to a certain area of the game, you need to board a plane. Once on board, you're stuck watching a static screen until you reach your destination. Again with this crap? Seriously, these games are aware we aren't on an actual plane, right? I don't understand why I'm forced to wait so damn long just to go to the next available area. Does this really make sense from a gameplay standpoint? Am I really getting more Oh, it's done already? Wow, that was nice. Were you paying attention there, Maple Story? Because that's how this kind of thing should be done. I originally wanted to joke about how no one plays this game, as having one semi-barren server is a bit off-putting, but there's quite a few people if you stick to the first channel or two. Unlike a lot of games, I really don't suggest going this one solo. Sure, you can pull it off when starting out, but a lot of the classes take a while to take down enemies early on, and don't work solo ideally, especially the wizard. Taking on rank 3 enemies is much harder than it seems when you have little but your weapon at your disposal as well, but having at least one person alongside you helps alleviate it. You can have up to 4 people in your party, and you share XP and Ellie as long as you stay a reasonable distance near each other. The game also features instances, but you're required to have a party ready in order to even enter them. A plus if you don't want to accidentally wander into one, and a minus if you really want to try to handle one alone. The real problem is, it's not that easy to get people to join alongside you. I'm not saying the community is rude, far from it, but a lot of people just tend to keep to themselves, and most of the people who see in town seem to be up to their own thing. More often than not, though, I'd happen across someone in the same area as me, and they'd be the ones to initiate a hello or an invite. This is much, much different from how people will normally treat you in MapleStory. This is not only due to the game's relatively low population, but the game itself fosters an environment that allows people to encourage cooperation rather than fighting over scraps. My best example of this is the system that grants you credit for killing monsters. In Maple, all you needed to do was cause the majority of damage to a monster, and you'd receive everything that goes with it. The loot, the experience, and credit for the kill, and the loser went nothing. In this game, even a small amount of damage caused to an enemy is enough to grant you credit if someone comes by and finishes it off. There's been a few times where I was questing in a place that was still a bit challenging for me and had to keep working to kill a single enemy. If a high-level player came by and blasted down the one I'd just done damage to, it still counted towards my quest completion total. Sure, I didn't get as much XP in Ellie, but I got what really mattered, and I highly appreciate that. The game also has a few PvP systems in place, allowing for one-on-one PvP and team PvP. In this system, you're on a 5-minute timer, and you're forced to fight in a small arena to see who can score the most kills. The level separation is immense, and while your character is scaled to match the other character in level and stats, the perks and skills a higher level player has unlocked will far outmatch those a lower level player will have. So it's balanced a bit, but don't bother trying it too early on. The game even features a dueling system that works in the exact same manner, but there's no reward for doing it. All you need to do is invite the other player to PvP, and you'll both be sent off to the dueling area. The first time I found this out, I accepted the duel on accident and was a little bit miffed about it. I think my score of 12 kills to their 0 really drove that point home. For player trade purposes, there's both a free market system and an auction system. While many games like this would force you to buy a shop for the free market in the game's cash shop, this game allows you to purchase a small temporary one for a mere 5,000 Ellie. Occasionally you might notice a system message reading, "The quiz will start soon," along with a large button on the side of the screen that will read quiz. If you hit that button, you'll be ported to the quiz area where you just choose from multiple choice questions concerning the game, math, language, or even basic sports and world trivia, and compete with everyone else who's playing at the time. You get anywhere from 10 to 1 points for answering a question depending on how long it takes you to answer, and you can double your points for a question by hitting chance before choosing an answer. However, if you choose the wrong answer, you'll lose 10 points. You'll be surprised how easy it is to choose incorrectly. Remember what I said earlier about the horrid translation? Well, it's still here. Some questions come out horribly vague. Sometimes math questions come out as a random bunch of symbols instead of the proper mathematical ones, and sometimes the answer you choose will be marked as wrong despite how unquestionably correct it is. Lateil, I'm pretty sure that this is not how you spell hallway, but clearly you know more than Google or I do. Quizzes take a ton of time, about 10 or 15 minutes from start to finish. But if you manage a good score, you'll receive an insane amount of experience, often enough to level you up instantly at earlier levels. So it's at least worth doing for that. They seem to appear randomly, but I did notice that I was seeing one at 6 PM every day. I'm pretty sure it's on a schedule, I just can't seem to find it anywhere. The game features a very in-depth guild system involving not only levels and buffs for being in a guild, but guild alignments that grant you differing bonuses whether your guild is considered order, neutral, or chaos aligned. Of course, you might want to know the real issue with a game that's a lot like MapleStory. How are the people? Well, it's not remotely near MapleStory. These people are actually decent. Sure, they still talk in emoticons and chat speak on occasion, and a lot of times I was questioning just what was being said, but they usually mean well. Oh, I won't deny the existence of jerks. I'm pretty sure they're around here, but they're hardly the norm. You want the best example I can give? Here goes. I had a bunch of cash shop items called magical packages left over when I was rounding out some points I had. They're essentially grab bags filled with a chance to receive a weak prize like a short-lasting buff potion, a middle prize like a cash shop microphone, or a great prize like a stat-boosting piece of gear. I noticed someone selling theirs for approximately 1 million Ellie apiece, and figured that selling the rest of mine would be a good way to get rid of them, so I got a free market booth and set up mine for much cheaper. When in desperation I lowered my price to 100,000 Ellie, I came back into the room to notice that they were all bought up, but the person who bought them was still standing there and asking me if I was present. As they were about to leave, I managed to answer, and they asked if I listed them that low by mistake. When I told them I want to just be rid of them, they told me I can get away with selling them much higher, gave them back to me, and here's the kicker, let me keep the money they spent buying them. If this was MapleStory, there's an 85% chance they would have bought up all of them, asked me if I had more, and then left me a nice lol 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 L2P noob you got scammed lol for my troubles. While I can't really judge the actions of an entire community on one person, the fact that this was the first person to buy them from me, and the fact I pretty much never ran into anyone who was rude and more often received compliments and free items from people, shows me this community fosters a positive cooperative attitude over obnoxious competitive one. I'm pretty sure it has nothing to do with the fact that my character is a large-breasted warrior girl in a bikini. In short, if you wanted the Maple-style gameplay without the Maple-style people, this game is worth a shot for that alone. Called the Fashion Shop in-game, it's a pretty accurate term considering that most to all of the items within it are cosmetic. There's a few niceties like skill resets, but when you consider that a lot of these niceties can be bought with the in-game currency, there's no real pressure on buying them here. Cash Shop items require the OG planet currency called Astros, which are bought in a fairly normal conversion system, 100 points per $5. A lot of cosmetic items in the Cash Shop cost around 50 to 100 Astros, so be aware of that if you have your eye on multiple pieces. There's two major differences from this Cash Shop and Maples. First off, when you purchase a cosmetic item, it is permanently yours. It's not going to vanish from your inventory within 90 days. Keep in mind that not all Cash Shop items are permanent, as things like pets feature a time limit, but at least they come fully equipped with features like auto loot and auto potions. One major final difference? You can trade most Cash Shop items in-game. You don't have to pay for anything if someone's willing to do it for you, and on the reverse side, if you're not interested in the Cash Shop loot, you can at the very least use it to turn a major in-game profit. Otherwise, just shop around. There isn't much that will seriously improve this game, or is outright required to enjoy it. If you wanted to play a game like MapleStory and enjoy the idea of a 2D platforming action MMO, you really can't go wrong with Lattale. While the game features a much slower start and dodgy translation, lacking the polish and time of MapleStory, the look of Lattale and the attitude of the community far surpasses that of its inspiration. Here's my final rating. For a purely 2D animated sprite game, this game does its best with what it has. It's very colorful and great to look at, with a lot of variety of the worlds once you delve deeper into the game. Combat is surprisingly deeper than what I'd expect from a game like this, allowing for blocking, deciding between quick light attacks or heavy ones, or even retreating to gain your bearings before you go into battle again. It won't feel like a well-placed paperweight will be able to play this game for you is all. The community and the company behind the game all seem very supportive and helpful. When I saw an ad claiming Lattale was the friendliest MMO around, I was more than willing to run into it screaming challenge accepted, but it held up a lot better than most. If you want the MapleStory experience without the MapleStory attitude, Lattale may be the underdog, but give it a shot. If you want to play dress-up, at least you don't have to do it every 3 months. Once you purchase a cosmetic item, it's yours, so you can make your character look pretty much however you want and not worry about the upkeep. Even if there's an in-game way to obtain a pet, a lot of the shop pets, while rentals, still offer niceties tacked on, and might make your leveling experience a bit easier. Of course, if you want to make some quick in-game cash, you could just buy a few of the popular items and let the players make you rich in no time. I wasn't really into this game when I started out. The slow pace of the leveling and combat, followed by the stilted translation, made for a weird, confusing experience, but once I delved further into the game and understood the quirks, I warmed up to it. However, if you hold a lot of regard to first impressions of a game, there's a good chance you're not going to want to stick this one out. As per the norm of these Maple clones, the graphics, sounds, and music are all overly bubbly and cartoony, which I know is a major turnoff for as many people as it may attract. Unfortunately, unless someone decides to MMorphosize Metroid or Castlevania, you're going to be stuck with the cartoony stuff in this genre. So again, if you're afraid of losing your man card, steer clear. Next time, I'm looking to close out a company's trifecta of MMO games by reviewing another similar to an older title suggestion that won't ever go away. So, how many of you are upset that I kept referencing MapleStory in a game that's a lot like it? None of you? That's interesting.